Hi, everyone. This is Christine again, and your classmate, and I'll be discussing how to choose technology wisely for course design. It's based on a summary of a couple of chapters of the book Te- Teaching in a Digital Age by A.W. Bates. I'll also be discussing the frameworks for choosing technology by A.W. Bates. Okay, so I thought it'd be important to discuss a little bit of learning theory that supports the selection of technology. In this assignment, we were tasked with choosing three examples of technology, which I have listed here. And just wanted to discuss kind of the continuum of learning theory that supports the type of teaching that happens with each tool. And according to Dr. Bates, epistemological consideration is one of the foremost considerations in selecting technology. Uh, that is because he believes that the instructor or designer should know their teaching philosophy. So there's a continuum, objectivist, constructivist, and connectivist, I think it is, dealing with social connections. And so that represents who is in control of the resources and the learning experience. And of course, with objectivists, the instructor is in control of the resources and the activities and is the leader in that. It's kind of a content based teaching style. So, depending on the goals of the learning objectives and the teacher's philosophy, that would guide the selection of the technology tools. There's a lot more that could be said about that, but I don't want to go too far into this discussion. In my opinion, and I'll discuss this more on upcoming slides, but each technology tool that I selected could be supported by the objectivist view, which is a very fixed pedagogy, and some of the tools could also involve more student engagement, and so they lean towards somewhere between objectivist and constructivist. Okay, so the LMS system is involved in my experience, all online teaching, and I've experienced this both as an instructor and as a student. Um, it at its minimum, I thought of it at first. So Dr. Bates describes the use of these technologies as far as technology affordances. So what are the unique characteristics of each tool? What is it about this system that you can do that maybe is more difficult to do with other systems? And so with the learning management system, he discussed text, so written word, as involved in each um, technology tool, but as uh, a kind of technology, I guess, because a book is a technology, but uh, computing is the first thing I thought of with LMS because you have an interface of a computer. But when you think about it, it stands for Learning Management System, and it is so much like a book. A lot of times, it's designed to guide students chronologically through activities and announcements and pages, digital pages, uh, in a contained unit called a course shell. So it has a beginning, middle, and end, like a book. Everything is communicated through text. Uh, it has that's the minimum. It can incorporate multimedia and it can require learner engagement, but I think of it as a book or as a text format, but with a different layout. So the navigation really is where the difference is between this and other forms of text. And also based on the amount of design that's implemented in an LMS, it can have multimedia features or features that require more of the student's engagement. So that would require add-ons or apps where there could be collaboration, for example, Google Docs, where people annotate. Students within the course shell could be grouped together and do assignments together. But everything is through a written response, right? Everything, it could be a video, you could do presentations and things like that, but a lot of the interaction is going to be through written text. So, what is the advantage of text Text is the only and main way we have through language to make abstract ideas concrete. Um, it's permanent in the sense that it can be returned to after a period of time, and the words and the meaning are still there. Text allows us to organize information, um, both symbolically through words, but also using graphic organizers, tables, graphs, things like that. It allows for analysis. So when you write something, what you write can be critiqued, uh, and can be analyzed, can be picked apart. So the LMS at a bare minimum has the tech affordances, is what Dr. Bates used the term he uses, which means the thing suggests how it should be used, right? Um, so if I ask a question, I expect a response. If it's a discussion post, so it's what are the unique features of this technology tool that allow, what type of engagement does it allow? And so the LMS has a lot of potential, but it requires a lot of work on in its design to kind of create that engagement that you want. Okay, video has a long history, right? Video is great, and it has technology affordances that allow for a greater synthesis. So you have abstract ideas that are explained. So you have the audio and the visual together, and it allows for students to get concrete images, but also get abstract explanations at the same time. And that helps with synthesis of new ideas. Okay, so demonstration, illustration. Um, it brings students or people to situations, places, experiments that they wouldn't be able to easily replicate or experience. There's a high interest level for students with video, and it can be very practical for skills demonstration and learning. Another relevant example is in primary resources or case studies in which it'd be beneficial for viewers to experience um, something they wouldn't otherwise be exposed to. I remember reading about the example of maybe it's an interview with an immigrant, and that can help with cultural sensitivity or understanding in a way that watching or listening or reading a debate about immigration would not. So that's an example that was really relevant for me. Okay, and Dr. Bates makes the point that students may have to be guided through watching the video. It's not something you just let go, so it has to be contextualized and worked into the learning activities to be most effective. But it can be very effective. There's a pause button, there's a stop. You can have a conversation, you can ask questions and guide students learning through the use of videos. Okay, so I included PowerPoints as one of the technologies I'd like to discuss because I feel like most people are familiar with slide presentations. These are considered dinosaurs, if done kind of a traditional objectivist way. The speaker is the expert presenting information, and the learner doesn't have any control over the length of each slide or the length of the presentation. And so there's kind of like this not knowing, what this presentation is going to be, or if it's going to be interesting, or how long, etc. This is a PowerPoint presentation that I'm doing here. So, in a lot of ways, PowerPoint slides do violate or can violate cognitive principles of multimedia learning that Dr. Bates discusses, using too much text or overwhelming the viewer or not being relevant, not being coherent. So, um, but I think they're an important technology because they're so ubiquitous and they can be useful with presenting information. So they have a lot of the technology affordances of text, right? So you're dealing with explaining abstract ideas, making things concrete. It's permanent, it's asynchronous. You can pick it up later and read the notes from a PowerPoint presentation. And they also have more potential than they're given credit for. So you can include or embed notes in a PowerPoint slide or visuals or so there are multimedia principles of the effective use of visuals, and you can incorporate that knowledge into creating your slides. So it doesn't have to just be words on a page, or it doesn't have to be crowded out with sentences. So it can also have embedded media in there. So there's a lot that can be done with PowerPoint as well that abides by the multimedia design principles that are referenced in the chapter. Everything, as far as I'm learning, it's about design and how well you can uh, incorporate your knowledge of how learners learn, how they best learn. And so in certain situations, PowerPoint slides or slideshows can be effective. Okay, so Dr. Bates has come up with a framework for effectively choosing technology to fit the situation, and it's the acronym SECTIONS, which addresses a wide range of concerns, which usually as teachers, as designers, our main concern is what is the learning design theory say about what technology will work best. And that is a consideration, but there are a lot of other considerations in choosing technology. And I don't want to go over each term because I think that's well established and discussed and summarized, but I do want to talk about some patterns or trends I saw in his discussion that really impacted me. Um, and one is that the need for institutional support, that's mentioned in more than one area of this framework. And for instance, in cost. So there's a lot of overhead, I call it, in the implementation of technology. So a lot of investment of time, teachers' time, a lot of investment in making sure that there's the technology support. So if 50 people need to use um, need to get on the server at the same time to use this one piece of technology, is it going to crash, or are they in a situation where the institution is educating students and orienting them to the use of technology, if that's going to be a big part of the learning experience. So there are policies that need to be in place as well. So there is a lot of support that teachers and instructors need from the institution in order to incorporate technology. Okay, not least of which is cost. So there's a whole part of the framework, number 6, organizational issues, that discusses a policy really, and the need for the institution to be forward thinking in their attitudes really, and their material support of instructors as they pursue implementing technology, specifically when a change is being made. Another point that Dr. Bates makes is knowing students and the student groups. So students come to the lesson at different levels, and the way you choose technology is based on where the student is at the time. So he discusses, for example, when students matriculate to college and they're not going to have a working knowledge of abstract thinking or how to kind of process abstract thoughts. That's a progressive skill that builds over time, and so that should be a consideration in choosing technology for freshmen versus seniors who are confirmed in their major. And then your student group could come is very diverse, so they have a mix of experiences and experience with technology or just experiences in general. And then, all of these things that we have to consider are called boundary limitations. So these are limiting factors or constraints in the use of technology. Um, so taking the idea out of just the theory of what works best, but what is practical. Dr. Bates is very practical, because if the students can't get to the technology, then it doesn't matter if it's the right piece of technology for the assignment. If they can't use it, or if it's not reliable, then it doesn't benefit the learning. Also, I don't want to neglect course design, because course design is important in this consideration of the selection of technology. And Dr. Bates does discuss the 12 cognitive principles of Mayer. I think it's Richard Mayer, who came up with multimedia principles, how to best compose work, so that we make the most of students' ability to absorb information and learn without overwhelming them. So that is a consideration, but it's not the only consideration in choosing technology. And this section's framework is a revision of a previous framework. So he added um, uh, the terms networking and security and privacy because those are increasingly important. Social media being used in networking to connect students with professionals in the field, and security and privacy, since we're using a lot of third party apps. Every time you make an account, then that's your information being exposed. And there's an expectation when you're in a classroom environment that you might be discussing sensitive or controversial issues, and you need that assurance of privacy to be able to participate. And as we're exposing our information, exposing ourselves to a lot of different platforms, we need to be aware that that brings a greater risk. So he added those aspects. Okay, so how am I going to use the sections framework and what I learned about choosing technology in my interest, in my work? So I'm continuing the idea of training advisors at the college level to use motivational interviewing in their advising sessions. I do a lot of ad hoc advising, so it's not necessarily case management where you're assigned students. You'll meet a student and it'll be someone you never met before, working in one of many different, a variety of majors, so you don't know what you're going to get. So what I'm interested in is at being consistent in the advising model that we use and training my fellow advisors in how to do motivational interviewing. And so I was thinking about using Adobe Express, which is I don't even know what to call it. It's a multimedia production platform in which you can make videos, slides. You can. I'm going to try and use it to basically bring to life a script. Have a case study where my coworkers could. One person could be the student. One person could be the advisor, and based on some background information about the student, the advisor would then pose certain questions which fit within the motivational interview model, and then um, respond as the student might respond. So a lot of creative writing, and then kind of feed that script into Adobe Express using avatars. And what Adobe Express does is it adds hand motions, so body language, pause, tonality to make it kind of seem like a real conversation. Because I want my coworkers to not just answer questions, but as an advisor, you get a feel for, is this a real conversation or not? Is this, or is it going to sound flat and two dimensional and silly? So I want to make it as realistic as possible and something that they can reflect on and see, hey, I think this would work, or maybe this would not work for me. So I thought sections help me think through the considerations I would need to keep in mind to make this happen, which would be, does every advisor have access to the Adobe Express application as an employee? When would they work on it? Would they have to do it during their working hours? So that kind of goes into the cost factor. The time is a major cost in the sections framework. Is this something they're going to have to do in addition to their other duties, or is the institution going to relieve them from some duties so that they're not doing two jobs at once? So and also, have they only used word processing software, or would they feel comfortable navigating um, and composing a different type of product than maybe what they usually do? So these are things I have to consider based on the sections model, and that would inform my lessons and the progression of training, not just learning in theory what is motivational interviewing, but how do I use this tool? I don't want them to be frustrated. I want it to be something fun. And so the sections model really helped me think through that. Ultimately, I think it would be a very interesting exercise if I could design it in a way where it wouldn't be so burdensome to learn. Okay, so my conclusion on what I've been exposed to with Dr. Bates is that using technology is about combining the proper design and teaching philosophy with understanding the boundary conditions in which you'll be teaching. So the limitations or constraints um, may require you to shift some of your thinking. So what, doing the best I can do with what I have, is how I think of it. And that includes where your learners are coming from and their experience. And, uh, you know, as in my example, I couldn't do all of what I want to do with the avatars in one lesson. It would take, a progression of lessons. So that's something I have to consider. Do I have 3 lessons, 4 lessons, or do I have to do a training? And I think that's why a lot of people just use the PowerPoint because they might have 30 minutes. That's their conditions, and they don't have the time to kind of do these rich activities. So with the limitations we have, the boundary conditions we have, including the group of people we're working with, what can we do? The number of sessions we have. I'm repeating myself, but you get the idea. So it's combining those two and finding the most efficient use of both of those, the compromise between both of those, the ideal design, and then the conditions that you're working in. These are my references, and thank you very much.